Hey guys, on today's episode, we have Colby Register with us again. He's our Director of Programming at Impact, and we talk about the early struggles in sobriety. And he goes into his experience around his own struggles that he had early on. And then we also talk about the struggles he sees with the men he works with. So tune in. Welcome to Impacting Recovery Uncensored. I'm your host, Sarah Pritchard. This is a podcast where we dive deep into the real, uncensored truths about addiction, recovery, and everything in between. No sugarcoating and no judgment, just honest conversations that can help lift up the solution. So let's get started today. I'm excited because we have Colby Register with us again. He is our Director of Programming at Impact. How are you?
Doing well.
Yeah.
Excited to be here again. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, thanks for coming on. So today this is actually Chad's idea on you being a good person to talk about this. We wanted to talk about early struggles in sobriety and recovery. Chad was like, Colby had some struggles he can share.
Yeah, that was a real piece of work.
But we all have. So, but no, I think it's going to be great. And then I also wanted to talk about how you help the guys with their early struggles in sobriety, being able to use your personal experience with it, and also just what you see and what you observe of like someone struggling and if they kind of push through, or if they're struggling and they don't and go back out, and just things that we can maybe give some people tips and family members on, just all those things, if that sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. So I guess starting back with your personal experience, can you take us back to the early days of sobriety? Like what were some of the toughest struggles that you faced being sober?
Yeah, so my sobriety date is October 12th-ish, 2018. I say that because it was kind of a blur those first couple of days, and I had to kind of look back and be like, whoa, what day did I stop?
Yeah.
I went to treatment and I went to sober living. Then I ended up having about 6 or 7 slips, relapses, whatever you want to call them. And after one more, something just started clicking. I can talk about that later. But in early sobriety, I did not have a lot of hope that this was going to work. I had a lot of cynicism around the steps. I had given a pretty half-hearted attempt at the steps in the first 6 or 7 months I tried to get sober. Actually gave some kind of attempt. It was pretty half-hearted.
Yeah. Half measures.
Yeah. Yeah. So once I had one final use and a pretty dark moment of powerlessness and hopelessness, I remember sitting in my sober living apartment under the influence. Coming out of that, I kind of dried out, and then I eventually got honest with my sponsor, and I started working the steps with him, this time much more quickly, and starting that recovery process. It was all kind of murky in the beginning. I didn't have a lot of hope, and I had a lot of fear of relapsing. I didn't think that it was going to work, and I almost was hoping that if I was going to relapse that I wouldn't build up my life for 6 months, a year, 2 years. I'd go ahead and get it over with. And if this isn't going to work and I'm just going to die, I'd rather not get my hopes up. But the early months was just simply a lot of fear and a lot of regret and a lot of cynicism. But I became open to doing what others suggested, specifically my sponsor. And I could see that it had worked in him. And so I was just holding on to that sliver of hope that it could work for me. I mean, it was like almost nothing, but it was
enough.
Yeah, it was enough. And I guess, go ahead.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but I've heard this before, that we just have to be a little more willing than we're not. And And I think that kind of goes the same along with hope. Like, even if there's not, and really truly being hopeless is when true hope can show up. And just as you're talking about like how you were scared, I've heard it all the time, like fear won't keep you sober, fear won't keep you sober. It won't forever, but it can serve a purpose in those early days, weeks, months.
Yes. I mean, I would say I had a pretty cool experience talking to my sponsor about a year and a half in, and that was the first time I really was able to let go a little bit of that fear of relapse. Like for the first year and a half, I was scared out of my mind to use and drink again, even though I was experiencing some freedom from the obsession to use and drink. I was finding freedom, but I was still very scared that it was just, when's the other shoe going to drop? When is this, when am I going to just shoot myself in the foot again?
Right.
And so it was kind of funny that I couldn't even see the change that was happening because I was just like, keep your head down, just do this recovery stuff and don't get too hopeful. But
and so when you were like during that time in the first, few weeks, months, when you said you just didn't have a lot of hope or whatever, what were some of the things, I guess like external things that maybe people come up against of like, I'm sure you were like, well, what am I going to do for work? What's my life going to look like now that I'm sober? Like, this is not what I intended. Or, did any of that kind of stuff come up for you?
Yes. I got sober, and I think I might have mentioned this on the last time I was on the podcast. I won't get too much into it, but I got sober and I didn't have a whole lot of prospects for like building a good life. I didn't have a degree to rely on. I didn't have really any skills or trade besides like, some landscaping experience, I guess, and some other skills and trades that I had attempted to start to learn, but I really was pretty useless when I got sober. Like to the world at least, I just didn't have much to offer, at least so I thought.
Yeah.
And so, when I got sober and started finding a little bit of a strong foundation in my recovery to where this started to feel like, okay, maybe this is something that can work. I still didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Mm-hmm. And that was very scary. And there was thoughts if I should go back to college, which I think that's great if people want to do that when they get sober. I had that thought, fast forwarding a little bit to about maybe a year and 3 or 4 months sober, a year and a half. And I was like, I might go back to college. And then COVID happened. And I was like, no one was going to college anyways. Everything was online. And It just kind of seemed like maybe this isn't the right time to go back to college. So I would have these thoughts of like, I need to form a plan.
Yeah.
I need to do something. I can't just sit around and, okay, I'm sober now, but like what? I'm making $9.50 an hour. And in
what
reality,
were you doing at that time? Sober.
I had just started working at the sober living that I got sober at.
Okay.
And it was exactly the job that I needed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They paid for my rent. They gave me a little bit of a paycheck. I was very irresponsible. I still had to learn how to become an adult, and it was exactly what I needed. I wasn't responsible enough to have my own place and to have a big paying job. Like I would have ruined that opportunity immediately. So, but I would get these thoughts. I would find some peace and acceptance for where I was at in my life and have some hope for the future. Like, okay, maybe, things are going to get better, but I'm just going to enjoy where I'm at right now. And then that would be followed up with a couple days, weeks, or months of like, I got to make a plan. And I think the thing that saved me was, and I was talking about this today at work, that I had made a wholehearted commitment to a new way of living, that I wasn't going to rely on what I thought or what I wanted or what I knew to live my life anymore. I was going to submit my way of doing things for a new way that was being suggested to me, a path of recovery, a path of a spiritual living. And that saved me time and time again. Like, I would have these plans, but I would have the honesty and the wherewithal enough to like open up to my sponsor or one of my friends about it, one of my good friends, healthy friends in my life. And they'd be like, yeah, you should probably chill out on that.
Yeah.
Like, you just got sober, man. Like,
Right.
give it a chance
Yes.
for everything to settle down for a minute, and then you can see where your life's going to take you. And people kept telling me, your life will be shown to you. Your life will unfold for you. Doors will start to open without you really having to do a whole lot, being on this path.
And that's hard to like accept, to be like, wait, what do you mean? Things are just going to happen in my life. Like, how do you know? I need to plan. I need to do things. I need to check it off my list. Like, and so I'm glad you're bringing that up, because it's like a natural progression. Take away the drugs and alcohol, and we finally have a clear mind. It's like, okay, well, now I got to get my life together because it's a mess. So I gotta do things. And You're saying your experience was like just letting the things unfold on how they're supposed to, and trusting the process, as they say.
Yeah, and I was putting in a lot of disciplined effort. I'd made this real commitment. One of my mentors in my life talks about unwavering resolve, a wholehearted commitment, all this disciplined effort that the recovery process requires, and facing discomfort and moving through it, navigating it, not going back to the old way of doing things. And I was doing things. It just was in a different area of my life than what I had been doing before. How I'd been using my energy and decision-making before was all very external, result-based things like job, money, love, like focusing on those things. And it ruined my life, literally ruined my life. And so I was busy. It kind of felt like I was keeping my head down and just blocking out the world and just focusing on these weird little instructions that my sponsor or like that was being suggested to me, but it was actually changing me on a deep level. And then my thinking started to change, and then my actions started to change. When I first started dating my wife, we just recently got married, she said, it seems like your spiritual beliefs are just sit in a chair and wait for things to fall in your lap. And I was like, yes and no. I don't believe in just, no action. But it seems that when I put my energy into recovery or spiritual living, it creates a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And things start becoming a lot more harmonious and easy in my life. So,
well, and it's like the actions that we start to take we're like moved to take those, or inspired to do these things, and our
intuition.
motives, and our motives are actually good. It's not like, just chasing the paycheck or love or whatever it is. It's like we're putting all this spiritual work in so we can be guided on whatever action it is that we need to take next.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you pointed that out, because yes, I'm by no means saying like just sit back and let things happen in your life and let God just like, come down and do a lightning bolt and you'll just sit on top of a pile of money. That's not how it works. And so kind of talking about like before you mentioned relapses or slips or whatever, obviously you were struggling if you're going back out and drinking and things like that. What would you say, like why wasn't it working then versus, and I know you mentioned like you were fear and there was a level of surrender that you had when you got sober, but like what was it? Were you really seeking those external things or do you even know?
It was all very foggy.
Yeah.
When you drink as much as we can drink, it's which toward the end there I was mainly drinking, and I found that to be the most debilitating of any substance I did. Just mentally and physically, I was just a wreck. you would think that not sleeping, not eating, not showering, and my teeth starting to rot, and all these I'm getting sick all the time. I can't keep anything down. Would be enough to produce willingness to do whatever anybody suggested to get sober, especially someone that's like, hey, I have experience with how to be sober. I'll show you. You'd think I would have just been like jumping for joy and just doing whatever he asked, but I didn't. I was still, that's why there really is no bottom to this. It seems to be an internal surrender that has to occur. But the externals, I just I wanted what sober people had. I wanted what the staff of the Sober Living had. And I wanted what my sponsor had, who didn't have much more time than me. He only had about 6 months sober, but I could tell he was happy. Mm-hmm. My first sponsor. And I wanted what some of my friends had and some of the people in my home group had, but I was not willing to go to any length to get it. I was willing to do certain things, but not everything. And that's why I go back to what one of my favorite mentors talks about, having a wholehearted commitment throughout any kind of uncomfortable, scary situation in your early sobriety. Just a wholehearted commitment to follow suggestions and do what people are asking you to do, and be 100% honest about what you're doing behind closed doors even. I was not willing to do that in early sobriety, and I found that bought me about 30 to 90 days at a time before I would use and drink again.
Right.
And with the accountability of sober living, with the threat of being kicked out and living in my car, with the threat of losing all my new friends, and the threat of just completely crushing my relationship with my parents and my family, I mean, they were pretty much done. I have to think by the time I ended up going to treatment. I know some people go to treatment pretty early, but I was somehow able to avoid it for a long time.
Yeah.
But with all that, it just still didn't seem to produce that willingness to go to any length for my recovery.
Yeah.
But after an experience of absolute hopelessness, internal hopelessness, one last time using and drinking, nothing external consequence-wise happened, but I had never been more hopeless and depressed in my entire life. And then something started to shift that day. From that day forward, something started to shift, and I began to be honest was the first thing I noticed. I began to be honest with my sponsor, and I began to follow through with things I said I would do, whereas before I didn't seem to be able to do that. I still kind of wanted to do things my way, but receive the benefits of a recovered life.
Yes. Well, and that is so important because it's like keeping our word. And for me, it was like, it wasn't that big. It sounds really bad, but like it wasn't that big of a value for me to keep my word. Like if I made plans and then had to cancel because I was too hungover or I didn't feel good or what, it just didn't matter because alcohol was always up here and everything else was under here. So like keeping my word or canceling plans was like in my MO, you know?
It wasn't that big of a deal.
Right. And then now it's like if I don't keep my word, like I feel really bad. It's objectionable to me. Mm-hmm. And the whole honesty piece is hard too early on because we've lived in such dishonesty for so long. It's like when we're in active addiction, or at least for me, I was incapable of being honest. And I didn't even know, like, it was just like the way of life because I'm trying to survive and it's all this hiding with the alcohol and all this stuff and trying
you
to.
Have to.
And so then you get sober. I got sober and it's like, now you're telling me to be rigorously honest. Like, what does that even mean? You know? And I'm so grateful that I had people in my life that were so open and honest with me. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can share that. And yeah. oh, you hid alcohol in the closet too? Cool. And even something as simple as that. And there's so much more, and there's so much deeper stuff that addicts and alcoholics experience, of course, but just little things to open me up to be able to be honest. Or if I wasn't, then come back and be like, hey, that, actually, I got to tell you this to my sponsor or a woman in my network or something like that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's hard for people early on to be honest, keep their word. And we're not going to do it perfectly, but to like strive for that and like to like truly seek to be that way. I have found that we'll be okay. We'll be safe and protected.
Yeah. It seems to be a big part of the recipe.
Yeah.
For sustained sobriety. I think the thing that kicks it all off as far as starting on a path of successful recovery is that first bit of honesty with myself that I cannot solve this on my own. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the experience I had on October 12th-ish of 2018. For the first time, I really realized just how powerless I was. I'd known it here. I had been told it by my sponsor. I had seen it in my life, but I hadn't truly accepted it. And they say alcohol is the great persuader. So it really beat me down to zero.
Yeah.
And my now sponsor, I just changed sponsors after being with the same guy for 5 out of the 6 years I've been sober. I had one sponsor for the first year. I had another sponsor from 2 to about 2 months ago. And then my sponsor now says it's when that hopelessness of my condition meets the hope of someone that has been able to solve the problem. That's where the magic happens, when those two things meet.
Yes.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
And
credit goes to him.
And so I guess kind of piggybacking off of what we just talked about and shifting to the men that come through Impact, what are some of the early challenges you see? And I guess do you spot it early on, or is there a specific point in time, or is it their behavior throughout, or all of the above, or everybody's different?
Yeah, I've been fooled, and I try not to act like I'm some sort of mind reader, or I'm like some sort of detective trying to figure out if they're being genuine or not, or if they're super surrendered, or if they're just kind of doing this for the wrong reasons, or because they may not even know
right
themselves. Some of the things I look for, or some of the things I see, rather, are residents who come into treatment, and if they're easily able to set aside the distractions of their life, even though it might worry them and they might want to talk about them and just be like, man, I'm really struggling. I can't stop thinking about my wife, or I can't stop thinking about if my employer is going to fire me or not, or I can't stop thinking about my children. But if they're talking about it in that way, where they're just trying to let you know that's where they're at and they're asking for help with that, those guys are in a good place.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I was like, that's actually really good that they're like aware and opening up about that.
Those guys usually know that they can't fix those things right now, and that they've been trying to fix them for years and it hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. And so they may not know the ins and outs of the recovery process, but they just know that what they've been doing, not only around their drinking and using, but their life, has just totally and utterly failed.
Right.
Those guys have a great chance of getting sober and staying sober, because they just know their way hasn't worked, and they've already submitted. They're like, I'm going to do things, whatever you say, I'm going to trust it, because I have nothing to lose, because I can't go on living the way I've been living. Those guys have a great chance, and they're fun to work with. Same thing with guys that I sponsor in my personal life. They're they're super fun to work with. And it's really cool getting to be a part of watching their life get recreated, because oftentimes it does. Then there's the guys that come in that are not super, they want to be focused on the recovery. They see it's attractive. They see the life that I live, or some of us live, that work there, and they see it's attractive. They want it, but they're not really willing to do, like I mentioned earlier, everything that it takes or everything that is suggested to get there. They want to pick and choose what they want to do. And then those guys, I don't know how much of a part I have to play in it, honestly. If there's a kernel of surrender in them, it can grow, I think. I've seen guys that come in that have terrible behavior, but they end up changing and staying sober and becoming great men.
Yeah.
Then I've seen people that are super polite the entire time they're there, and they have no shot when they leave. They immediately get loaded and everything in between. It doesn't seem to matter what the behavior is.
Right.
We all can be different based on personality. It seems to matter more their willingness to follow instructions and take suggestions. And then there's like a third type of person who comes in who just wants to tell me how to do my job and tell me how to run our treatment center.
Right.
And those guys can have a white light moment. They can have a light bulb moment and just totally change as well. Or they can stay that way and, they act like the director of our treatment center the whole time they're there. And they go out and they do the same thing in their lives that they've been doing all their life, which is try and control everything and everyone around them.
Right. And like the need to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm just thinking of of course, women that I've worked with over the years, but also doing groups at Impact. And if they'll like argue with me, and especially in the inventory process, and it's good because it's like really challenging me and love and tolerance and all those things. And
of course.
But it's like if they have this need to be right and unwilling to see things from a different perspective, it's super, super hindering.
And I think a lot of it comes down to, with all three of those types of people that I think come to treatment or try and get sober, it all depends on their ability to be open to something that might not make sense to them. Because we've all, and this is not original either, we've all just relied on our own logic and our own reasoning. And if it doesn't make sense to us, we resist it. I only like to do things that make sense to me.
Right.
And the super surrendered guys, the guys that they may have a lot of problems. They may have a lot of issues. But they know that they can't solve it, and they're open to this new way. Even if they're skeptical, they're like, I'm just going to try it your way because I have nothing. I'm out of answers. Those guys, they're willing to try things that might not make a whole lot of sense at the time. I said it earlier in group today, right before I drove over here, that what we're doing here right now might not make a whole lot of sense to you. It will mean something more later on.
Yeah.
In your life.
Yes. Well, and then this also kind of makes me think of like when people are going back to the real world, and like you're a musician, and so you play like in bars and you do shows. And so I'm just thinking of like when we get sober and we're starting to do things that we want to do, like go to a concert or go to a football game, like where do you see people struggle in that area versus not? Because I know it's a natural, I do believe it's a natural, like, okay, this is uncomfortable. Like, this is the first time I'm going to a concert sober. This is the first time I'm getting on an airplane sober. Like, all these things that come up. It's all these like
relearn
firsts.
How to do them.
Yeah, exactly. So do you have people that have you worked with guys that have brought those concerns to you, and how do you try to help them, and maybe even your own experience too?
Yeah, I operate off the idea that it's been told to me that any attempt to shield someone from temptation is doomed to failure. Otherwise, people wouldn't try and sneak drugs into treatment or jail,
Right.
or the probation color code drug test would be able to keep us sober, keep us in line. I'll give you 2 experiences from my life, and then I'll talk about maybe how I've tried to help people navigate those. The first was I was freshly sober. I still had another couple slips in me, but my cousin's wedding was coming up, and I was like really freshly sober. And I think I deluded myself into thinking the reason I didn't want to go was because there was going to be alcohol there, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
The real reason I didn't want to go was because I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
I was really ashamed at how I had behaved around my family, totally distancing myself from friends and family, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, even my own parents and my sister. I was so full of guilt and shame that I could not show my face there. And so I didn't go. And of course, at the time, no one was going to try and make me go because my parents were like, "Oh, yeah, we don't want him to be tempted
Or triggered.
Yeah, exactly. But it was much more selfish than that.
Yeah.
It was much more selfish. It had nothing to do with drinking. It had everything to do with I was super embarrassed. And I did go back and make amends for that to my cousin. Another experience I had was after I started staying sober a few months later, I took a promotion at that sober living facility and moved to Prattville. And me and my friend ran that facility for about 10-ish months. Felt a lot longer than that because of COVID was happening in the meantime. But this is right before Impact opened. So I was down there, and I was about a year and some change sober, and I reconnected with some friends. I'm from Montgomery originally, so right outside of Prattville. And I'd reconnected with some friends, and they asked me to back them up on guitar, their little duo. And I remember agreeing to do so and going to this bar. It's called the Thirsty Turtle. It's closed now. So you can imagine what kind of place it was based on the name.
Yes.
It's a fun little place. And and I remember standing outside of the bar, and I felt really weird about it. And I called my sponsor, and I was like, "Hey, I hadn't talked to you about this, but started playing with some music with my friends. Really the first time since I've been sober that I really got out there and started trying to play music and really practice and try and be good at it, because in active addiction, I was not great at it. I didn't ever practice very much." And I just said, "Should I be here? I feel like I'm being dishonest by being here, because I'm working at a sober living facility, trying to be a good example in my job, but also in my own personal recovery. I'm sponsoring guys. I'm supposed to be a good example. I feel like I'm being a bad one." And he said, "Why are you there?" I said, "To play music and make money," because I needed money too. And he said, "All right, then go play music and make money."
Yeah.
That's paraphrasing. That's what I remember of the conversation. And it shifted my perspective as to it is all about the underlying guiding forces and motives in my life. And staying away from that wedding was the wrong decision, probably in hindsight. Going to that bar was a really interesting experience, and it really made me have to look at myself and why am I here right now? Because for years I would go and do things for ulterior motives, and I would delude myself into thinking I'm going for a good purpose, but I wasn't. But I was truly there to play music, and I really had no desire to be in the bar environment or to hang around people that were drinking, just kind of longing for the old days where I could drink.
Right. Yes.
And I wasn't trying to sneak some drinks either. It really wasn't honest just desire to be there. And it was a great experience. So after that, I realized even more so how much honesty with my sponsor and with people in my life and with myself was truly just so vital to staying on this path of recovery. So with the guys that I mentor up at Impact or in my personal life, I really just focus on that.
Yeah.
Why are you going there?
Right. Well, and it reminds me of a piece of literature when it talks about focus on, I'm paraphrasing, but focus on what you can contribute to the event or the occasion versus what you can get out of it. Because I had a similar experience in early sobriety, going to a bachelorette party or weekend, and I'm like, everyone's going to be drinking, and she's like, Sarah, you're not the one getting married. Like, go be there for your friend getting married. Like, that's why you're going, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. This weekend's not about me. And so I think we lose sight of that a lot.
Yeah, it can be a little bit misguided or self-centered to just do everything I can to protect my sobriety when in reality, my reasons for not going under the guise of like, oh, I don't want to be tempted, it can really be something else.
Yeah.
And that's where the honesty comes in.
Or if like, from my personal experience and working with other women, it's like if they truly are quote unquote tempted, then they're not on solid spiritual ground. And yeah, they should not go.
Yeah, they definitely shouldn't.
And let's dive into some work and figure out why the obsession is still there. Why is it, why are you still being like, I want to drink and I think I can do it this way and blah, blah, blah.
That's why people go to treatment, to be removed from temptation for a while. Like it can be helpful in early sobriety. It's just not a long-term solution. Eventually we have to be out in the world and can't be locked away forever.
Yeah, exactly.
But with the guys that I help, it's really as simple as I'm asking them questions to try and get them to answer for themselves why they're going to a certain event. Mm-hmm. And I've had guys that have had families that are in active addiction and they don't want to be around a family member because that family member might be loaded.
Yeah.
And in some instances, it's best to avoid that family member. In other instances, it's best to be there. It just really depends on us and our motives, and how strong you are in your sobriety. Yeah. So I don't know whether someone should go to an event or not. Yeah. It really depends on the path and where they're at on it.
Yes, I agree. And so how important is community and connection in those early days? And we've kind of touched on it, but like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so community, I was listening to an audiobook on a psychologist, I won't name him, but he talks about how every human desires for community. Whether you're alcoholic, drug addict or not, we all desire to be a part of community, even if you're introverted, which I typically am. The most comfortable and talkative I am is usually at work with our, some of the friends up there or in my home group. But if you see me at a wedding, I'm typically not the life of the party. But that psychologist made me think of just like, yeah, it is super important for me today. And it's a big part of the recipe that gets and keeps me sober. And early sobriety, I was talking about this yesterday, actually with my sponsor, that in early sobriety, I joined a group of recovering drug addicts and alcoholics. And I made it my home group. It was a 12-step group, and they were all around my age, and not a lot of sobriety. I think the person that had the most amount of time had 3 years. they were all in their 20s and 30s. There would be some older people that would come to the meeting, but everyone that was a member of the group was young. And that was vital for me. If I hadn't have seen someone around my age with my shared experience struggle at a young age and get sober at a young age and see that it could be done,
right,
dozens of people,
yeah,
I don't know if I would have had the same experience joining a group with older members.
mm-hmm.
So that sense of community with people with my shared experience, uniquely shared experience, even within the addiction and alcoholism community, a very specific experience. I needed that. And so through the years, now my home group is mostly older people, and I relate to them, and I want to seek the wisdom that they have. I really need their wisdom and guidance of living for years on this path of recovery and having that life experience that only time can give you.
Yes. Yeah.
And now I feel like I need that. So to sum it all up, I've sought out the community that I needed at the time. In early sobriety, it was a younger crowd. And when I moved to Prattville at a year sober, that was scary because even though I'm from that area, I didn't know anybody in recovery there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the friends that I had didn't really want anything to do with me, rightfully so. And some of them wouldn't take my phone call, and I understand that. So I had to start all over again at a year sober in Prattville and Montgomery and form a new community. But I had developed that once in Birmingham.
Yes.
And so I just knew I needed to do it. And so even though I was very shy and very introverted and very insecure still, I mean, I'm just a year sober, I'm sober and I'm like happy to be sober. I've found some freedom, but I'm still, I'm
still uncomfortable.
Still very immature, still very insecure, still very uncomfortable with myself. And that had a lot of work still left to do.
Yeah.
But I just knew that my life depended on me forming a community down there and finding a sponsor. And as uncomfortable as it was, I found a new sponsor, and I didn't know him, but I just did what he asked me to do. I would call him every day, and eventually, and one of my mentors, one of my old man friends, did the same thing. But when I started working with him, I would call him every day, and he was like, you don't have to call me every day. I mean, you were already a year sober when you started working with me. I was like, yeah, but you didn't tell me not to. And I just felt like I need your guidance.
Right.
And I got super involved in Montgomery AA and the surrounding areas. I go to meetings all over because I had nothing really better to do. I didn't have a wife or kids. I had started dating someone at the time, but I didn't have a whole lot else to do but to be super involved in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was. And so that community, busting out of the Birmingham community and forming another community in Montgomery, really showed me just how important it was and how that no matter where I go, I can find a community.
Yeah.
I just have to go looking. And
right.
A lot of people will use the excuse of my town is small, or I'm not good at talking with people. It makes me nervous. I had to ask people out on mandates, like platonic dates, to become friends with them.
Yeah.
Me and my one of my closest friends, Ronnie, that's what I did one day. I just said, Ronnie, I'd like to become better friends with you. I'd like to start going to dinner with you before this meeting. That would eventually become my current home group. It's just, uncomfortable and kind of awkward, but I knew my life depended on those connections and community. It seems to be the catalyst for me working on my own recovery and finding newcomers to help too. It seems to be the catalyst to get the thing rolling. I mean, if I wouldn't have found meetings and a community, I don't know if I would have stuck around.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It's perfect. Thank you. And brings so much light and context to it all. And, I've heard many times, like, isolation will kill an alcoholic. We can't be isolated forever because it's the mind. The problem centers in our mind. Our mind is what is going to work against us if we don't have this community connection, honesty, like all of these things that we talked about for this hour come into play on why a person will be successful and live a sober life, recovered life, or not. And so I'm glad you mentioned all that because that really is super helpful. And I guess the last thing, looking back now, is there anything you would tell yourself in that first year of recovery, or like advice or something uplifting for 1 year sober Colby?
Oh, man. I was such a mess. Let me think. I guess my best advice would be just to focus on the task at hand. Yes, I didn't have seemingly much to offer the world at the time. I didn't have a degree from Auburn. I didn't have much skills or trade. I didn't have money. And it didn't seem like things were going to really, life was going to be all that interesting or cool for me. But I was sober, and I was just really looking around like, all right, where's my life going to go now? And I guess what I would tell my 1 year sober self is focus on the task at hand. You've seen what following this path has gotten you thus far. It's gotten you recovered from this life-threatening disease that you couldn't seem to go more than 30 to 90 days before without succumbing to it. Now you're a year sober and you seem to be happy about your sobriety. If it can work for that, why can't it work for other things in your life?
Yeah.
And I would just tell them to focus. Keep your head down, because that's where reality is in what I'm doing right now.
Right.
Like right now, me and you are talking on this podcast. Nothing else. Like if I started to trail off in thought while you're asking me a question about what I have to do after this, or a problem with my car, or some kind of uncertainty in my life, that's not reality. Like what we're doing right here, right now is the only thing that can matter. The rest of it is hypothetical. And so I just tell them to focus, stay in reality. My friend Tanner says that all the time. He says, wake up to reality. Just, this is it.
Yes.
So
I love that. Thank you. Anything else you want to add?
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Went by super fast.
Did it? Good. That means it was good, hopefully.
I feel like we've only been talking for 15 minutes or so.
Well, thank you again. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yes. And thank you for tuning in to another episode. I hope today's conversation has inspired you, opened your mind, maybe even your heart a little bit. Remember, you're not alone. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we have all of our social media links in the description below, so follow us there. But until next time, keep making an impact. Bye, y'all.